I'm Robbie Moore. I'm the Member of Parliament for Keighley and Ilkley in West Yorkshire, and I'm also the Shadow Farming Minister.
So it's been 14 months since the last general election. So what issues are you hearing about from your constituents in Keighley and Ilkley?
I've been lucky enough to represent Keighley and Ilkley since 2019, December 2019. So many of the issues that have been raised over the last 14 months or so since the general election at a local level have been issues that I've been involved with prior to the last general election. So very much at a local level, it is things like the Airedale Hospital. This is a hospital in my constituency that has had challenges with aerated concrete, rack concrete, which is known for its structural deficiencies. And we were lucky enough back in 2023 to gain commitment from the government that we would be having a new hospital rebuilt to deal with those challenges of structural risk. So that's something that's a huge local issue that has been going on for a long time, of which I get a lot of correspondence about, making sure that the development of the new hospital is built to reflect the needs that we want it to reflect at a local level. So that's certainly one of the big issues. Secondly, antisocial behaviour and crime and drug dealing is a big issue, and this will be a common theme, no doubt, across many other constituencies, but it is a real issue that definitely haunts the constituency, Keighley and Ilkley, which I represent, and feeds into my campaign to urge our West Yorkshire Mayor, who has control of the police and crime strategy across West Yorkshire, to make sure that she is properly dealing with that level of antisocial behaviour on the streets of the constituency that I represent. And one which I'm very vocal on at a national level is the challenges around child sexual exploitation and gang-related grooming, which I've spoken about a lot in the House of Commons, but I've been very clear on my campaign of wanting to have an inquiry on child sexual exploitation specifically focused on Keighley and the Bradford district. We haven't yet achieved that firm commitment that we will have that inquiry that focuses on our area yet, but I am hopeful that will come now that we've had an announcement from the government that there will be a national inquiry looking into this issue. We just don't know which areas that's going to focus on. So, Harry, there's loads of different campaigns and different issues that I get communicated with as a constituency MP, as a member of Parliament, but they are three of many, just to get the conversation going.
I suppose many of these issues transcend constituency boundaries. They're sort of national. They're not confined just to where you're necessarily representing.
Absolutely the case, quite rightly. As MPs, you look at your constituency boundaries because you are quite rightly representing the 80,000 or so constituents that live within those boundaries. But people don't operate within those boundaries, only members of Parliament, in terms of how they're representing. So everything operates, of course it does, and the issues, of course they do, across boundaries. And where we are geographically located, there is probably an additional complexity of where we are in Keighley and Ilkley, because not only are we on the outlying boundary of the Bradford district, the local authority, Bradford Council, we're also right on the periphery of the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, because we've just got Lancashire neighbouring us, and we've just got North Yorkshire neighbouring us. And we are therefore also on the boundary of West Yorkshire Police Force and also North Yorkshire Police Force, and then Lancashire Police Force as well. So, and that adds an extra layer of complexity, because a lot of the issues, whether it's police and crime related issues or county lines, or dare I say who uses Airedale Hospital as a patient, are all coming across the constituency boundary as well as those other boundaries that I've talked about. So it's very important as a Member of Parliament that you're interacting with all of those different organisations to make sure that you're getting the best level of attention and best level of detail that needs to be associated with the issues that you're raising.
So Labour have announced changes to the inheritance tax laws, and your party have expressed opposition to this. Do you think that the government should go back to how it was under the previous Conservative government, or do you think there needs to be another change at the rules?
Well, we're absolutely of the firm position that there needs to be that 100% relief in place for agricultural property relief and business property relief, because what the new Labour government are advocating is a change in that policy, which will impact all family businesses. So whether you're a farming business, or you make mattresses, or you're a hospitality business, or a brewery, whatever the makeup of your family business, Labour are changing the inheritance tax rules that will mean that there could be a potential huge IHT liability coming down the line. And from a practical perspective, this is hugely challenging, because at the moment there's 100% relief, which means that on death of an individual, at the moment, whatever the value of that estate is can be transferred to whoever that individual wished the estate to be transferred to, with no inheritance tax being paid. The new government, this Labour government, are changing that by putting a threshold of £1 million in, so that the value of an estate over and above that £1 million will be subject to 20% inheritance tax. Now, that could be huge for certain businesses, particularly those in the farming community, because the average size of a farm within England is about 200 acres. And when you take into account the value of the farmland, the growing crops, the crops in store, the livestock, the machinery, the house, there might be a cottage or two for the farm worker, you are way, way, way over £1 million. And therefore there'll be an IHT liability. And the average farm may be breaking even in this country, or maybe returning a profit of 1%, if not less. And therefore it's unviable to pay that charge, the IHT charge, which will result in potentially assets having to be disposed of, which then really leads to that farm being less productive in the future. And the same scenario applies to any other family business, whatever that family business is. This is a real problem right now, because it's leading to a lack of investment within any sector, because businesses are taking the decision not to invest in the future because of a potential IHT liability coming down the line. So it is the wrong thing for a government to be doing. This is a catastrophic decision, a vindictive decision by this Labour government. And that's why, as a Conservative MP, I believe absolutely that 100% relief for APR and BPR needs to be remaining in place.
So it's obviously an additional pressure for farmers. And this, of course, follows an especially dry summer, particularly in Yorkshire. And I've got some statistics here, and it says that according to an NFU poll, 92% feel it is important that Britain has a productive farming sector, and 89% say British farms should grow as much food as possible to support national food security, which I suppose is especially important with climate change being a particular issue, and with potential tariffs from Trump.
Yeah, absolutely. So the inheritance tax changes that the Labour government are bringing out is one of many challenges that our farming community are now facing. So not only should this Labour government scrap the family farm tax, as it has now become known as, they should also give more certainty to our producers and growers about what their actual strategy is for increasing domestic UK food production at the moment. We have what's known as sustainable farming incentives, which is a contractual relationship between a farmer and Natural England in terms of receiving money to provide a environmental benefit. But there is uncertainty with that, because the Labour government have decided to halt SFI, sustainable farming incentive applications, and they have also decided to close new applications from being processed, because they're going to develop a new scheme going forward. That creates a huge amount of uncertainty for many farming businesses, and that's on top of what's called the basic payment scheme payments dramatically reducing in year 5 of the 7-year transition payments, again reducing significantly, way further than what was previously announced, the amount of basic payment scheme monies coming in, again reducing the amount of certainty that many of our farming businesses have. And Harry, you mentioned the other things that farmers don't have control of, like the drought that we've experienced this year, not only in Yorkshire but predominantly across most of England, where yields have been significantly down, and the amount of wheat, barley, oilseed rape that's been produced in this country this year will be less. Again, adding to cash flow challenges for many of our farming community. And there are other things, unfortunately, that the government are bringing out, like a fertiliser tax and a double cab pickup tax. And then there is uncertainty around increased costs associated with employers' national insurance and minimum wage increasing. The narrative that I'm just trying to indicate here is that the government are not bringing out progressive policies that are helping our food productivity within this country. And that worries me when you then look at a global perspective and you see the uncertainty on a global perspective that we're seeing, whether it's in Ukraine or elsewhere, and indeed trade relationships that have been really poorly negotiated, particularly by this Labour government with America, with bioethanol, removing a market for many of our arable farmers that are producing feed wheat that supplied the bioethanol market. It is not looking like we have a government on side of our farming community. And that worries me, Harry, in terms of the narrative going forward when we all want to increase our food productivity within this country.
Do you think the government have underestimated the response to their proposed inheritance tax laws?
Generally, I don't think that the government care. And I don't say that lightly. When the government first announced their IHT changes, I genuinely thought that the government was being naive. I previously worked as a land agent or a rural practice surveyor. My job literally before being a member of parliament was to value a lot of agricultural businesses or rural property assets for capital taxation purposes like inheritance tax. And so I thought the government were being naive, not necessarily understanding the consequences, the negative consequences that this fiscal change would have. But they've stuck with their guns and they've not listened to organisations like the National Farmers Union, the CLA, the Tenant Farmers Association, or other organisations or stakeholders, and have refused to engage, refused to listen. And therefore, this isn't just them being naive, in my view. This is a vindictive policy that they are determined to roll out. And therefore, I actually, unfortunately, have come to the conclusion that the government of the day, this Labour government, don't really care what their implications are on our farming community and seem to have a mentality that food productivity within this country doesn't matter and we can import produce as we wish to meet our demand. That is not the approach that we need to be having to provide that level of certainty for our UK growers and producers. And that's why I will continue to use every last breath in my that I have up until the finance bill gets voted on in autumn this year to continue to advocate to all Labour MPs and this Labour government that they must change course and axe this family farm tax.
I suppose what I find interesting about this opposition to the inheritance tax rule is it's almost a unity amongst a lot of parties other than Labour. It's created quite a lot of agreement from parties ranging from the Conservatives all the way to the SNP.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe that's because all other parties are willing to listen to the stakeholders that we are engaging with. And it is absolutely heartbreaking when, like I have, you sat around many a farming kitchen table and listened to those hardworking farmers that are working incredibly hard all night hours of the day throughout the year to put food on our plates, and seeing the absolute anxiety levels increase as a result of a huge IHT liability that could come across their path that they would not be able to pay. The government have got to wake up and listen to this, which is why it's been not only great that the political parties in the opposition side of the House of Commons chamber are united on this, but indeed all of those stakeholders that represent many of our family businesses across the UK are united on as well, that the inheritance tax changes are catastrophic for all family businesses and farming family businesses across the UK. And again, we have to use every opportunity to advocate that this government change course on this.
I suppose it's also interesting that with climate change a very key issue, the government appear to be advocating for more food to be imported, which is presumably excuse me, the exact opposite approach that needs to be taken.
Yeah, that is absolutely a direction that this government seemed to be going in. And also, what is incredibly worrying is the removal of grants and financial incentives, like the sustainable farming incentive, like many of our grants that have been going into provide environmental benefit, being removed from our farmers being able to apply for, that are providing the environmental benefit, that do address some of those climate issues and environmental issues that we face. So not only are we seeing a government removing incentives to increase productivity for food generation, we are also seeing the government remove financial incentives for many of our farmers to provide the practical environmental benefits that their land can do in terms of increasing conservation and biodiversity provision that they're able to provide on farm. So again, deeply worrying when you see a farming budget having been slashed at the last the last budget that we had, and we see a narrative going in the same direction in advance of the budget that we're having on the 26th of November later this year.
And the country needs more houses to be built, but I suppose it must be a concern that so many farmers, with their financial constraints, are having to sell land in order to make a profit, essentially, for more houses to be built. How exactly do you think there should be more houses built without losing crucial farmland?
Well, what I absolutely don't agree with is the direction that's going to be set under the Planning and Infrastructure Bill, which is working its way through the Houses of Parliament at the moment. This is a bill which is saying that all local authorities and Natural England will have the ability to compulsorily acquire land, not at market value, but at agricultural value, disregarding that hope value that sits potentially on top of the agricultural value. Therefore, meaning that a farmer will not get paid the value of what that land is worth at market value. That is firstly a huge poor, an absolutely catastrophic decision that this government and this Labour Party is making. Secondly, is the level of uncertainty associated with where house building is taking place, the amount of power that organisations like Natural England will have, and the increased powers that Natural England will have under the Planning and Infrastructure Bill to carry out the environmental offset that will be required from the development of houses or infrastructure that is taking place. Something which I don't think will achieve the environmental outcomes that the government hopes to achieve, because they're removing the ability for the private sector to be able to deliver that. You know, we have to have houses being built. We have to see more houses being built. We need to see the right types of houses being built in the right locations. But the strategy that this government is outlining is not delivering that, and dare I say, not delivering the environmental benefit that should be coming as aligned with that as a result of the Planning and Infrastructure Bill that they are putting their hopes on.
Would you describe the house building strategy as a bit haphazard and chaotic?
Absolutely. It's not aligned with what local need or local demand is. We see Section 106 money from many housing developments not going in to mitigate the negative impacts of those housing developments that are taking place. I see that at a local level in my own constituency. You know, I live in a small town called Silsden, which is in the centre of my constituency. You know, we've seen probably about 500 houses being built in a relatively short period of time, but the level of infrastructure that is getting built alongside or enhanced alongside the house building that's taking place is non-existent. The roads are not being improved. We're not seeing the school being increased as a result of the new housing development taking place, or new doctors being surgery spaces being provided as a result of all of the housing that's taking place. So it is absolutely haphazard. And then we see a direction that is going along this supposed green belt / grey belt / brown belt that is taking place, with a direction that is simply now no longer brownfield first, is not sensible for trying to create any continuity within the house building schemes that will be taking place going forward. communities need certainty, and house builders need certainty. And at the moment, I don't think we're having the best of both worlds for either party.
Cost of living, of course, remains a pretty major issue with inflation on the rise. What's the cost of living situation like in your constituency?
Well, things are tough, absolutely. Locally, we've seen council tax increase by 10%. That's an outrageous decision that this Labour-run Bradford Council, that is the local authority that controls my area, has made. Back in 2021, my local authority, Bradford Council, was saying that they were in a sound financial position. But now they're increasing everyone's council tax by 10%. We see the government applying employers' national insurance to every business across our area, increasing the overheads associated with running a business. We see minimum wage now increasing, putting an increased level of overheads on many of our businesses. We see the business rate relief that many of our businesses were able to benefit from now being reduced, therefore increasing the level of overheads associated with running many of our businesses. So not only is the cost for running businesses and therefore producing services or products that people are buying or using increasing, we see the level of disposable income decreasing as a result of things like council tax dramatically increasing. So, and these are all decisions that are being made by either a Labour government nationally or a Labour local authority locally in an area that I represent, negatively impacting people that want to just go about living their lives and having a good level of service provision. Things are difficult and only being increased as a matter of difficulty by the policy decisions that are being made by the Labour Party, whether nationally or locally.
And what measures do you think need to be taken in order to reduce inflation?
That you need to get the national decision making on a sound footing. We have been making as much noise as possible about the challenges around employers' national insurance. That hits every single organisation, whether you're trying to run a school, a doctor's surgery, a dentist, or run a business. If you are increasing the overheads associated with running those businesses, coupled with bringing out decisions like the inheritance tax changes, where you're creating a level of uncertainty of an IHT liability coming down the line and therefore holding back funds to invest, or if you're making decisions around the employment rights bill that is creating a huge amount of anxiety to many employers from recruiting more employees to keep their business from going, it creates a level of uncertainty and risk associated with the investment that you're willing to put in your business. So inflation will only decrease if you have sound policy making that relates to reducing the cost of running businesses and reducing the amount of uncertainty and anxiety that is associated with that. Again, we are not seeing that coming out from this Labour government, and there seems to be a lot of uncertainty that is coming down the line with the budget on the 26th of November. So it doesn't look like it's going to be a good one, and there seems to be more tax raising coming as a result of what this government is sort of indicating in the run-up to November.
So do you think the government are going to double down in their budget?
Well, the indication so far is that it will be a tax raising budget. And that worries me again for the reasons given.
So is there a particular increase, or have you seen a particular increase in businesses closing in your constituency over the past 14 months?
I would definitely say retail is continuing to be very much challenged. Retail has always been challenged with the online market, as we know, which is why decisions were made under the Conservative government to increase the amount of business rate relief that was available for those high street businesses. That's not now the case under this Labour government. The amount of rate relief for business rates has been reduced. Again, employers' national insurance, minimum wage is impacting many businesses from operating. And that's hitting businesses, retail businesses at a national level, like we've just had another one, unfortunately, remove itself from the high street here in Keighley, with the closure of another national brand removing itself from Keighley, which is, again, another challenge of the fiscal market that it's facing. And we've seen our supermarkets, for example, Sainsbury's, close its cafes at a national level. Again, that's impacted Sainsbury's here in Keighley because of predominantly employers' national insurance. So again, I just reiterate that there are decisions that have been made fiscally in the last 14 months that is impacting communities like mine from more pressure fiscally being put on local businesses.
And on a local level, is there an administrative area that Bradford City Council could look to as sort of an example of an area that's doing quite well?
Well, I would say that areas which are definitely calling out that they want to grow and thrive is the manufacturing, engineering, and tech sector across the district. In Keighley and in Ilkley and across the constituency, I'm lucky enough to represent many manufacturing, engineering, and tech businesses that want to go on and do well. They want to thrive, and some of whom are investing in their businesses to be able to do that. But they need more clarity and more certainty to do those big headline policy areas that I've certainly referenced. We've been lucky enough, going back to 2021 in Keighley, to have about £80 million of money ring-fenced to the constituency that I represent from national government. That money was awarded back between 2021 and 2023. Where we've got to make sure that public money is spent wisely is to drive inward private investment for our manufacturing businesses, to drive the local economy, to really push the tourism agenda. But it is difficult wading your way through getting that public money spent when you're held up with the lethargic nature in how our local authority at Bradford District Council operate. And that is frustrating when all you want to do is crack on and get things done at a local level.